Hello and welcome back to Vampire, where we are head on the tail of Sansaricq Ministry. Ministry being a clan of the Vampire the Masquerade, which is going to be... Why did it unmark all of those people? I looked at them, most of them. So we're looking for him, Eli Sansaricq, the former High Priest of Harlem. Eli Sansaricq is a veritable enigma. But one thing is certain, although his ruthlessness and aggressions are known far and wide, he is no longer the undisciplined ruler of Harlem. Ousted from his territory, Sansaricq and his new sect of serpents were sent scrambling for a new place to lay low, disappearing from the kindred society's view. I guess when I restarted the game previously, I must have unmarked them or something, or maybe there's another bug. I'm not sure. So yeah, then we're on his tail. Oh brother, it might not seem like much, but with all the loose ends strewn around us, we finally snagged a solid lead. North Brother Island is not the liveliest spot, but hey, it's totally the Ministry style, if you ask me. I used to be one of those kids who was always running around and stirring up some shit after school. Shocking, I know. One of the favorite pastimes of my gang of little rascals was exploring the ruins of an old hill hospital at night. Well, exploring might be a bit of a stretch. We never actually got inside. Just dared each other to stare into the windows for as long as we could. Usually, I was the last girl standing, but let me tell you, those hours after dusk in the fall, when every whisper of the wind, every rustle in the trees was multiplied by 100, they were torture. No, I kind of miss those days. So one Peric and I hit the wrecked pier of North Brother Island and see the derelict buildings nearby. I almost squeal with delight. Almost. The desolate ambience is somewhat ruined by the perfectly new RIB moored along the pier. Some of them have clearly been used in the past couple of hours, judging by the mud and melted snow on the seats. Just to make sure we're on the same page, what exactly is your connection to Sansaricq? I don't know what our connection is to him, to be honest. As I said before, I think usually being straight with him has not been a problem. He seems to be an outcast and anarch, just as we are. A little bit of honesty could go a long way. Let's be fairly honest. So I deal on the, let's call it darker side of the web, right? It has come up, yeah. Well, Sansaricq was technically Reynard's client, but I was the one handling all the sketchy stuff he requested. Never met the guy or anything. Everything always went through Reynard, but Sansaricq is the only client who I know by name. I see. You have mentioned before that he and Reynard had a relatively good relationship. How do you plan to exploit that? I snort, half pissed that he knows me too damn well, half amused by that good relationship crap, given all that means as if they didn't try to actively kill each other. I'm just about to break it down for him when suddenly we're cut off by gunshots. And they're getting closer. We duck down and observe as some guy comes tearing into the pier, screaming his lungs out in terror. He's running backwards, tripping over every bump while desperately trying to shoot at something in the tree line, totally unaware that his gun's clip has been emptying for a while. He's decked out, head to toe, in urban warfare gear reminiscent of the hunters I had the pleasure of meeting a few times lately. He hasn't noticed us yet, blinded by his delirious fear. Perfect moment to strike. So feeding, not necessary, I would say. We definitely are not hungry, it seems to me. I cannot read those indicators, but I feels to me like we're not hungry. Well, let's our damsel in distress take care of him. Why not? I hold back, realizing that I'm actually curious how Sansaricq handles situations like that. I catch his eye and jerk my head towards the screamer. Sansaricq gives me a confused look, then sizes up the prey. I blink, and next thing I know, he's already on the guy, fangs deep in his neck. Honestly, I didn't expect the usually stoic Paddy to tear into the hunter with such ferocity, but who am I to judge? We like to pretend that we're above mortals, but in the end, we're all just slaves to our hunger. All good? Sansaricq carefully sets the body down and wipes his crimson mouth clean, grimacing in disgust. Yeah, forgive me, but that was highly unpleasant. I laugh a little. You're hereby forgiven. If those were Sansarick's ministers who pushed his poor bastard to the edge, I'm not exactly eager to meet him myself. Sansaricq nods, looking at the lifeless body, but he doesn't bother to hide it, so I don't either. We share a quick glance before sneaking cautiously through the thicket towards the ruins looming over the bare trees. I wonder what he was shooting at. We tread carefully through the bushes, mindful of the crispy crunch of the snow underfoot, but let's be honest, the distant gunshots would have covered the sound of a stampede. Although, admittedly, the shooting was quieted down in the last couple of minutes, replaced by terrible screams of torment. We stumble upon several corpses, and surprisingly a decapitated skeleton with scraps of decomposing flesh still clinging to it. The murder of crows feasting on the scene couldn't care less. To them, flesh is just flesh. Gives us both a bit of pause. Those fuckers. The screams are almost drowning out the gunfire now, signaling that the ministers might be getting the upper hand. Oh, there's still gunfighting, I guess I didn't catch that. Better them than the hunters. I just hope they don't mistake us for enemies and decide we should share a similar fate. Great, Kali. You've got yourself right in the middle of a fucking war front. All of New York feels like a silent battlefield these nights. It's just our luck that the theater of war shifted here right when we arrived. So what's the plan? We could try sneaking past, hoping the hunters are too busy with the serpents or to notice us, or... Look over there. There's a spot on that collapsed floor where we could hide out and wait for this to blow over. Sansaricq crooks his head, pondering, absently twirling his ring, not in a panic this time, but more like using it to focus. Finally, he drops his hands and looks at me calmly. I say we go with whatever your daredevil instinct recommends. You sure you didn't hit your head on your way here? Positive. Well, I would say let's get involved. Well, let's kick some ass then. Maybe that'll score us a few points with Sansaricq right off the bat. Sansaricq nods and follows me as I kick down the door and enter the ruined building, every sense heightened as my vitae surges in anticipation of a fight. The floor is a jigsaw of body parts. You could probably piece together a few whole bodies from the mess if you were so inclined, but I'm not about to start counting. I walk over them without care, only half noticing the sickening crunch of bones crushed under my boots. As we creep through the building, Sansaricq suddenly stops and flashes 3 fingers at me. I press myself against the wall, tuning into one of the hunters stashed in the room next door. Sansaricq slyly kicks a pebble to mimic footsteps, Fooled, 2 hunters burst out, shotguns at the ready, but with just a flick of his wrist, Perrick has one of the hunters gunning down the other. Confusion is plastered all over the shooter's face just before I rip his throat out. The last one starts freaking out, blasting his assault rifle everywhere, trying to shoot us through the walls. I duck behind the door frame, sneaking a quick glance. He's alone, terrified. The crows calling outside with the windows amplifying the eerie scene. But let's be real. This horror show, we are the true monsters. So then, Feral whispers, right? I watch the murders of the crows until one of them catches my eye. Kill. The dark sky of the winter's night blackens as a whirlwind of black wings and sharp claws storming into the desolate room, tearing, ripping everything unlucky enough to stand in its path. Although the man first tries to fight, blindly firing his gun at the deathly dance of the feathers, the crows keep swarming him incessantly. A hive mind made of flesh. The hunter tries to crawl towards the door, his body leaving a bloody smear on the crumbling concrete, but his progress soon halts. The crows plucking out his eyes like olives out of a martini. His screams fade quickly, and soon, so does the flurry of wings. The crows, having done their brutal duty, fly out of the window, leaving behind something that might once have been mortal, but now is far less. The clamor we caused inevitably draws more trouble. As we turn to leave, a bunch of hunters flee in, weapons at the ready. We go back to back and switch places, throwing them off the balance, but before we can launch, we hear a loud ding, and the hunter's front of the door looks like he's about to lose his head. And that is exactly what happens. His head is severed by a cut so clean that his body stands dumbly for a moment before crumbling onto the ground. Behind stands a group of serpents, all decked out in leather and gold. Scary as fuck. For a split second, the room goes deathly silent. And then, all hell breaks loose. Patrick and I hardly need to intervene. The hunters and the serpents clash with each other, gunshots echoed, cries fill the air, and blood flows freely. It's all over in less than a minute, and the kindred, predictably, emerge victorious, leaving one last victim unscathed. The silence that falls is so oppressive that it almost buzzes in my ear. I start to think we've gone deaf, but I see Perrick checking his ears and I relax a little, relieved that I'm not the only one so overwhelmed. The serpents don't move, don't speak, only look at us, judgmentally, calculatingly. In this heavy silence, filled only by a scent of blood, the sound of approaching footsteps feels like the crash of thunder. The man who enters the room is barely my height, but he carries himself with a grandeur of a king, ruthlessly ruling his domain. Sansaricq, the most powerful snake himself. From the silence of his movement, it becomes immediately apparent that his thundering heels were all for show, an intimidation, a warning. He magnanimously gave the assassins a chance to flee in disgrace, or, most likely, let them scatter for a more interesting hunt. Hell, I'm not sure if Perrick and I shouldn't have just bolted. The last remaining hunter tries frantically to crawl away, but he collapses under Sansarick's steel-capped boot. That's when I realize why the serpent is walking so oddly. He's dragging a dead hunter impaled on the enormous claws protruding from his fingers. The body slides to the ground with a hollow thud. A kindred, who I imagined is his child, second in command. She hands him a clean handkerchief, which he uses to wipe the blood off his hands, and promptly flings it onto the corpse he just dragged in. Standing over the whimpering hunter, he surveys him, with a sheer disdain and tilts his head to make direct eye contact with me. Given that you've been smeared with the blood of the kettle, and inclined to believe you didn't partake in the assault, am I right? There is something to him, this youth pastor intensity that prompts me to answer immediately and recklessly. Please, I've had enough bullshit from this crew already. No, we're sibling in arms here. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I toss him a sour glance, making me look uncool in front of the battle pastor. Sansarick's gaze locks on me, unblinking. His posture rigid as a cobra's. His stare is so intense it could make me sweat. If I could sweat, and if it weren't so damn used to pressure. I try to appear relaxed and confident when he lets out a short, sharp whistle. Instantly, two of his serpent lift the last hunter, propping his limp body into a standing position, and Sansaricq doesn't spare him a glance. His eyes are fixed on me. He's been a real trouble, this one. Quite the rogue, wouldn't you say? Of course you would. Why don't you teach him a lesson? It's clearly not a real question, and the only acceptable response is a dutiful yes, sir. So, the thing about the ministry is the ministry are seducers. They want to bring you to your sins. They want to make you sin, and they revel in the idea of making you sin, like making somebody do something that they despise morally, perhaps. So perhaps this is a test for him. Lingering kiss, love what you hate. Spill your guts. The lingering kiss, I'm not sure what discipline that is. Love what you hate. Let's try it out. I mean, the perpetually spinning cogs in my head do a double time, looking for a way to impress Sansaricq. What do I know about him? He would definitely relish in a show of power, that's for sure. But in what way? The cruel one? The formidable one? I'm running out of time. I feel excitement rising in me like a tide, and an itch to do something dangerous and recklessly returns with the to do something dangerous and reckless returns with a suffocating strength. I seize the whimpering mortal by the hair and plunge my fangs deep into his neck, letting my power surge through me, my bones, into his flesh during our unholy communion. I drink his blood, relishing in the way it's temporarily quenching my hunger, but most of all I make it feel good, electrifying, unparalleled. No, don't! This hunger won't last long without yearning for another kiss, just like a man stranded in the desert would beg, maim, and kill for a drop of water. He would do anything, everything, to satisfy his overwhelming need for more. At least for a time. I detach myself from his neck and gently lower him to the ground, his eyes glazed and vacant. His hand trembles as it reaches for his throat, fingers tenderly brushing the bite mark with a mix of longing and astonishment. I step back, giving Sansaricq a smug, expectant look. He gives a nod of amusement. Interesting idea. Making a hunter addicted to what he hates as much as he fears it. I nod, thankful for what I guess is a compliment. Sansarick's snake-like eyes finally shift from me to that pathetic pile of crap on the ground that used to be a proud hunter. But it's not enough. He advances towards the hunter, slowly, lazily, and lifts him off the ground with both hands clamped onto his shoulders. I watch from the sidelines as his entire demeanor shifts. Gone is his relentless intensity, the danger, the zeal. His eyes look soft and sweet when he looks them with the hunters, and murmurs something into his ears, gently, as if soothing a frightened animal. I watch with increasing surprise as the hunter melts into Sansaricc's arms and embraces him, sobbing into the crook of his neck and crawling desperately at his back as if trying to draw him closer. It looks intimate, reverent, a veritable encounter with the most beloved divine. Sansaricq carefully pulls away, ignoring the hunter's clinging hands, and fishes out a hand grenade from the hunter's gear. Return to your patrons. Make him see the error of his ways. The hunter immediately gets up, feet unsteady, and limps away through the door and into the cold darkness. His gait is awkward and clearly uncomfortable as he never, not even for one moment, averts his eyes from Sansaricc's face, an emerald look firmly etched into his features. Come. He struts towards the pier, his entourage obediently in tow. And of course, we are dragged along too, thanks to an overly persistent serpent who thinks shoving us is somehow necessary. It's not like we have a choice, right? With no more distractions, the path seems way shorter than I remember. I can see one of the RIBs bobbing in the East River, waves in the distance. Must be that charmed hunter coming to ruin his boss's mood. No. Sansaricq turns to Peric and me, sizing us up with an icy glare. But even though his tone returns to the frightening intensity from before, it carries a tinge of benevolence as well. You have the misfortune of catching me in a nasty mood, I'm afraid. But if you prove an acceptable explanation for your presence on my turf, I might just let you go. Well? I flick a glance at Patrick and catch a subtle nod out of the corner of my eye. Name's Kali, and this here... Oh, I know who that is. The Baron's lapdog. The court's errand boy. I'm more interested in you. Yeah, to say, being in this kind of spotlight doesn't exactly boost my confidence. I'm Raynard Cassell's child. I run with his coterie, and I know you've had business relations with him. I was actually the one who quickly handled the orders for those trinkets you wanted. I didn't realize Sansaricc's face could grow even more sour, but here we are. His lips curl down, eyebrows knit together, and he glares at me like I just kicked his cat. But then, unexpectedly, he throws his head back and laughs. Loud, free, mocking laughter that makes me lose my cool. His laughter abruptly cuts off, and he's back to staring at me coldly, unblinkingly, perfectly poised. I hadn't heard from good old Ray for a month, child. Whatever you think you procured went to someone else's hands. He falls briefly silent, and then his serpent eyes narrow. Do you even know what exactly it was that you acquired for him? But my silence is his answer. Not gonna lie, his words hit me hard, and I'm a little flustered. Reynard rarely deigned to share his plans with me, but it wasn't like he made a habit of lying straight to my face. Why would he hide it all from me specifically? Sansaricq clicks his tongue disapprovingly, and Peric clears his throat, moving his scalding focus onto himself. Would you mind telling us about the recent dealings Reynard involved you in? Any information could help. I roll my eyes at this stiff and overt attempt at whittling info out of Sansaricq, but he only smirks, then sighs, as if thinking about Reynard brought him great trouble. Which admittedly, it might have. Nobody really thinks about Reynard unless they absolutely have to. and by that time it's usually already too late. I don't mind. Admittedly, it's mostly because that brat was insufferable, fixated on the antediluvians, like a child obsessed with a new toy on the market. I'm staring at him, totally lost. Antediluvians? That's a first. Where did Reynard even get those antediluvians from? And why did he go asking the ministry? As if he could read my mind, Sansaricq tosses me a sharp look and continues. How he came about the knowledge about my clan, and me in particular, hold that knowledge about how he came about the knowledge that my clan, and me in particular, hold the knowledge about our most ancient ancestors is a mystery to me. But he did seek me out, asking numerous questions about ancestry, power, and blood. It makes me jump a little when he waves his hand dismissively after such a long period of immobility and singular focus. Let me be perfectly clear. The history of Clan Ravnos was never of interest to me, and had little desire to discuss it. Neither had Reynard, up to a few months ago. What changed to prompt his interest in these topics? I haven't the slightest. I would bet that some profitable motive lurking behind it. What will I say, however, is that his focus on, how did you put it, business relations waned significantly. That is news to me as well. As far as I know, it was pretty much business as usual all the fucking time. For the first time during our conversation, Ellie's face becomes a picture of true savagery. Gone is the pleasantness, exasperation, tinges of courtesy. All that remains is anger, unrepentant and feral. Reynard Cassel has been slipping in his promises, O child of his. I am done graciously waiting for amendments. I sneak a little look to Patrick and see him nod at me encouragingly, so I collect all the broken and uncertain pieces of myself and put them back together. You can do it, Kali. But be charming. Be careful. Be calm. Never make promises, even those you intend to keep. I get it. So let me speak plainly. Reynard's missing. Whatever he's gone, for good or just laying low, I can't say. No one's been able to reach him. I think he's out there somewhere hiding, but he's off the radar. You've got your ear to the ground here in New York. Heard anything about Reynard in the last few nights? I have no interest in that brat, in so much as the objects he swore to procure from me. And since now I'm aware he had no hand in obtaining them, it is high time that I move on to greener pastures, don't you think? Especially now that I know they intend to deliver, no? Sansaricq almost seems like he might lighten up with a wink, but no, his expression snaps back to the usually icy detachment as he leans forward slightly, his gaze as steady and chilling as a snake's. Reynard Cassel meddles with powers beyond his ken. I wouldn't be exactly surprised if his sudden uptick in the hunter activity could be attributed to his actions, one way or another. I wait, hoping he'll elaborate on this strange and frankly insulting connection he's implying, but it seems he considers our discussion done. He straightens up and signals to his second-in-command, who quickly moves in to hear the hushed instructions he whispers. There's no way this can be all we take away from such a critical meeting. I catch Perick's eye and subtly move closer to him, ensuring our next words are shielded from any serpent ears. What's our next move? Sansarick's clueless about Reynard too. Your sire's messing with dangerous shit? Great. Tell me something I don't know. What now? He hesitates briefly. Does it bother you that Reynard has been undermining you and going back on commitments that involve your work? I guess so. I guess loyalty should be important, right? Yeah, kinda. And by kinda, I mean a hell lot. I know he's a bastard, I'm not a saint either, but there's been unspoken agreement that we're not gonna screw each other and over, you know? I see. Shall we take our farewells then? Hold up. There's one more thing I need to ask. I back away from our little huddle and cough to grab Sansarick's attention. He acknowledges me right away, but he takes his sweet time wrapping up his chat with his right-hand woman before shooting me an expectant, albeit impatient look. Just one more thing before we scram. The circulatory system seems to have a hit list, and Reynard's sitting at the top. Any clue what that's about? Sansaric's eyes narrow in anger and contempt. Well, call me astonished. He's been blabbing on and on about his latest illustrious benefactor, who would help him circumvent the red market. He makes such a sour face that, were we still mortals, I'm pretty sure he'd be spitting with disgust. Seems like he got caught on the wrong side of that slumbering bitch from Hudson. Frankly, good riddance with that. I am utterly lost here. And who do you mean exactly? My attention remains fixed on Sansaricq, but I can't ignore the abrupt, frantic motion as Perrick begins to violently twirl his damned ring. Sansaricq gnashes his teeth, and a low, seething murmur ripples through his followers. That Mitzi bitch, Fritra, or whatever the fuck her name is. You don't know her? Then count your blessings, child. What's her deal? Her deal is that she waltzes in like she owns the place and steals what's been righteously ours for decades. His eyes placed with a pure yellow hue fangs, elongating as his jaw loosens in a furious scream. I swear I catch a glimpse of a forked tongue flickering back into his mouth as he calms down, returning to his usual captivating appearance. I add two and two together and realize this Vritra must have been the one that ousted the serpents from their turf in Harlem. I try to share a knowing glance with Perrick, but he's too fixated on the damn ring of his, oblivious to everything else. So I decide to press on a bit harder. I wonder what kind of relationship Reynard has with this Vitra. Do you think? I do not think about her, child of Reynard, nor do I wish to start. My time is precious. We are done here. Well, so much for pushing. Sansaricq fully turns his back to me, conferring with some of his serpents. I strain my ears to hear their whispers, not even out of need to hear what they're saying, but more out of sheer curiosity. But Perrick gently tugs on my sleeve. I think our meeting has concluded. We should leave Sansaric's turf before he drives us out himself. Not much in terms of clues. You're right, I guess. I really hope for more clues than that. Well, at least we do know that Sansaricq has nothing to do with Reynard's disappearance. We'll strategize once we're away from his place. I nod, clear my throat loudly, and speak, not waiting for Sansaricq to face me. Thanks for not throwing us out our asses sooner, Sansaricq, and for the info too. We're out of here now. I spin my heel, but his stare halts me dead in my tracks. You should leave the city, child. Looking for that sire of yours will yield you nothing but death and ruin. And if your leaving means that brag digs herself deeper into his own shit. He gives me a smirk, the first one yet. And I might be willing to lend a hand. I'm ready to snap at him, scream in his face that I don't need his damn pity, but then it hits me like a freight train. He's not offering it out of sympathy. He gets off on watching Reynard suffer, no doubt about it, but then his offer, it's like this weird mix of prickled ass kindness, something you hardly ever see in the kindred world. And it's that fucked up kindness alone that keeps my mouth shut. So instead, I give a silent nod and hook arms with Perrick as we dip out of that decrepit building into the dead of frigid night. And that offered some explanations while also adding more questions. And we will be, seemingly, connect the dots next time. So see you then. Take care. Bye bye.